So, the IT outage and occultism was a video I'd uploaded yesterday, and I will leave you, as per usual, in the pinned comment along with any other links that I discuss in this vid. And it was a rush job, I said it in the vid. I just found out at the time about the IT outage, and like all hell broke loose in so many systems around the world, and it wasn't apparently wasn't a hack. It was a third-party company, as far as I could work out, from what the propaganda was saying anyway, that has a contract with or provides services to Microsoft in the form of security updates, yeah, and all that kind of thing. And through some apparent patch or update, then all hell breaks loose. And I saw some videos when I got back, and it was saying, by the very individual who apparently owns the company or is the head honcho, whatever else, that it was very specific to Microsoft, and other outlets had pointed out that anything which is by and large seen as open source, it was unaffected. Well, of course it's going to be unaffected if, it was a company employed or contracted to or by Microsoft to do stuff with Microsoft operating systems. So it's that aspect is not rocket science. But I also wonder about that in the bigger picture in many ways, because I think it all ties in, to be honest, because there'll be people out there going, well, I'm so glad I've got open source X, Y, and Z, etc., etc. And, for many reasons you could say, yeah, they're right to think that way. But then when you look at Echelon, the NSA, these other things, the illusion, no matter what operating system you have, well, is just that, an illusion. And you could go into this for hours, even to the aspect of cryptocurrency. Why did that suddenly become a thing? Wasn't it interesting how the early adopters made out like bandits, but just more specifically certain people? And yeah, if you were throwing even apparently very small amounts of money at the time, you could apparently be a millionaire overnight. I would say that when you look and reflect historically on that one, many people have missed the boat in that. I would say it was to bring about the embracement of a digital currency. And remember, you've also got to add to that at least 2 generations, at least that, and any other generation that engages in, for example, gaming. You could think of so many games out there where the reward is this digital something, of which within this game they get, for example, a better ship, bigger lasers, blah blah blah. But it is social engineering on steroids, and that I would argue that people were programmed through that, and of course Star Trek and Bond this and money transfers, digital, blah blah blah, encrypted X, Y, and Z. And you keep hearing that repetition. As I said, the complexity of it is, and maybe I should be doing a separate video, which I suspect will get a few thumbs down, even when it goes into crypto stuff. As I say, you could go off at so many tangents, but none of this is an accident, because everybody was told through movies and games and whatever else, look, Bond took a chip, for example, or the wave of a hand in, what was it, iRobot? No, I'll pay for this, and it was a wave of a hand, because, hey, most of the population are told that sci-fi, we become more enlightened, we're a better species, everything's more, But the reality of it is things like the Chinese-style social credit score. But how do you sell that to the West and get them to embrace it while making them feel windswept and interesting, never realizing that all this digital aspect is completely illusory, yeah? Historically, you've always found that what gets people by is things like commodities, things that, even when you look at, for example, and yeah, I know, look, I'll do other parts of this bit, but it's a very complex subject. But look at the initial aspect of the pandemic, yeah? Well, what was that? All of a sudden, you're your bot roll, your toilet roll. Suddenly, and it, straight in there. Oh, I'll just take that shelf. You saw the worst of people because they realised it was a commodity. They realised it was important. They were selling it within, whatever, even hours online at whatever, eBay, you name it. Yeah, you didn't see the best out of people, but yeah, all of a sudden it became this huge asset, at least for a while. Water was another one. Various other things. Obviously, hand sanitizers, you name it, blah, blah, blah. But this was all, these people look at the rest of us as monkeys on chairs, yeah? The think tanks, the underlying occultists, the various networks, all the rest of it. The level of contempt is, it's large, yeah? So you've got to set up the narrative like you have to in so many ways and so many things, depending on what is asked of you. But even, where we're at, well, this article from yesterday that apparently had been updated today, look at the title, CrowdStrike Boss seizes 3.4 billion fortune plummet by 100k and 9 billion wiped off his firm as his system sends the world into Microsoft outage crisis. Yeah? Now remember, they keep saying, it's not a hack, we were just doing an update, and oh, oops, me bad. But the net result is ongoing, yeah? But even the title, they had a chance, they've updated it, but they still left it with this special. His fortune plummets by 100k. Now that's contempt for the very viewership who reads, for example, this publication. But it's mockery, and it's part of it all, yeah? So obviously, when you look into the story, at least at this particular story, he's lost apparently nearly £250 million. But, anybody could say, well, people have got short memories. They can gain that very quickly. I don't disagree. But what's this all about? Who stands to gain? Well, what's been affected? Well, you heard GPs. So it's your face, first line officialdom. In this instance, that would be GPs. Can you prove who you are? Blah, blah, blah. All the rest of it. Appointment, etc., etc. The rest is, well, who else is being affected? Well, trains, planes, and automobiles. Yeah? And you have to reflect and go back, no, not that far. When it was all paper, you didn't have that issue. You really didn't. None of this. But I'll repeat, people have been programmed to, hey, convenience, all the rest of it. The occultists put all the problems in the way of people getting from A to B so that, compliance and go with the flow makes them feel good and they feel special. But when it goes tits up, and remember, from the occultist point of view, they're also, and they know this, externalizing the fact that cash, even in the form of paper money, well, it's the only thing that would have got you by in many situations during this. Why? Supermarkets. Well, we can't do this with cards, but cash will get you through that checkout, won't it? Of course it will. So you can imagine many of the headlines, many of the comments are only goes to show that it's important to keep the importance of cash. And, remember, this is a huge risk from the occultist point of view. But what's the bigger game? The bigger game is, well, we can fine tune this. It's a mistake, and yeah, but you know what? We've learned. Lessons have been learned, and that will be down to more specific aspects of ID, because they'll sell it like things like, well, even in the situation of a major computer crash or network crash, we have, and they could honestly, it's just an example. You could have many others, but the emphasis that open source was unaffected. As an example, well, we've got a backup. But as long as you have a more specific ID, because this will head to the chip. It still heads to the chip. But in the meantime, it can be the facial recognition. I'll give you an example. It was something I threw up on the community page of my YouTube channel. So Payface lands new retail biometric payments deal in Brazil. Supermarkets. Think about this. So Brazilian biometric payment startup Payface has clinched a deal with supermarket chain Italo, whatever, based in the southern Brazilian state of wherever, plans to offer facial recognition payment to customers in the city of blah, 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 for whatever else. Now, get back to this. At some stage, I think they're going to say we've got a backup solution, because they've emphasized, remember, a lot of people who will look at this will go, oh, geez, you know, it certainly doesn't look positive for Microsoft. And I keep saying, bear in mind that they've said, well, there's another thing. Just the narrative is, it's not affected open source. Now, think about, well, and remember, people are going through a lot of pain, sitting in terminals and whatever else, whether it be trains, stations, or airports. And remember, go with the flow. Seriously, go with the flow. And there we go. CrowdStrike chaos spreads to Dover. Hundreds of ticketless families cause massive jams as they turn up at busy port. Blah, blah, blah. I would say that this is still heading to facial biometrics and the chip under the skin. Ultimately. Seriously. Because anybody could have somebody else's phone, blah, blah, blah. People will say, no, it was far. Yeah, but what if the system's down? We need to have a backup. We can't afford to be doing this. We're stopping people going to Torremolinos or just getting to work, or you name this. And people could say, well, look, you're still not convincing me, Scott. But I'll give you this. From biometricupdate.com, UK Gov introduces new digital identity verification service bill. Yeah? Some sort of ID could be inevitable for the UK lawmakers. Blah, blah, blah. EU to fund digital programs with blah, 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 108 million euros for digital identity. There is an awful lot of money being spent on this. So how do you get people to accept this? Well, this pish. Yeah? Because whoever this CrowdStrike is, and apparently they have an enormous influence, yeah. They'll take the hit, but whoever individuals, even on the surface, if they're made to look bad, they'll, the individuals will gain some other ways, whatever it is. But the point is, it will further encourage people to think that to bypass all this blocks and, oh God, I couldn't get my appointment, couldn't go on to my flight to Torremolinos, I couldn't get on the train, I couldn't, whatever it may be. Oh, I couldn't get my groceries out of wherever it be, Tesco's, wherever, yeah. The plan is absolutely to get them to embrace these kind of things, which goes towards the globalizing of the Chinese-style social credit score. Now, you've seen many films throughout the years where the narrative is they are taking a chip and the hero says, right, no worries, we'll just deactivate or we'll cut out the chip. You've seen it in so many sci-fi things. But I would argue where this goes, if you haven't got a chip, well, immediately you're going to get stopped and whatever. This is occultism. This is absolutely biblical. They are up for the chip under the skin, and while I'll repeat that you may be able to cut it out, but if you don't have one, yeah, well, you'll be able to do nothing. This is all about getting there. Remember, lessons have been learned. Yeah, I would love to go more into the crypto, the digital currencies, all the rest of it, the naivety of so many. And it is a religion, by the way, and it is absolutely a religion about, sticking it to the man, sticking it to government in general, is to invest in something that doesn't exist, but it can be on a hard drive somewhere. But no, don't you worry. This particular version is secure. And I'll repeat also. Go back to gaming. How many games out there in the last few decades have rewarded the player by some digital something of value, of which, whether it's, say for example, spaceship shoot 'em ups, you get bigger lasers, bigger engines, better shields, blah blah blah, or whatever it is, daisy picking, blah blah blah, and you get level 3, whatever it is, but it's all digital with a perceived value. But the reality, and most people don't realize this, there is not a corporation or company around the world that has built hardware in relation to computers for the last few decades that doesn't have every aspect of it with a back door. Otherwise, they're not allowed to do business. The naivety of so many, and they go, don't you worry, this is secure. And you get, in fact, from memory, even recently, what was it called, Billions? And one of the characters, this Mike Prince or whatever the fuck he's called, he invests in crypto, and even the one other character, this Axe Capital guy, Axe, hey, I've given you crypto. Remember, it's all social engineering on steroids. But for example, this other character, this Mike whatever, that's in some part was supposed to be wanting to be president, whatever. And he's got X amount of billions on crypto, and the world's best hackers can't get into it, but he still has to fold and put in the wrong codes at some loss and all the rest of it. But the whole subliminal is, don't worry, this is unbreakable, and it's worth a fortune. As I said, it's a complex subject, and I could go into detail. But your thoughts, and I'll speak to you soon.